Further assembling would be the distance between macro-mass and macro. And each of them would have the observing point, the eye view of the whole collection of the hierarchy, with the key tags identified and their importance voted by the response of the public, the user bases. Therefore referencing the self and the interest further with the new encountered piece of information. It's pretty simple. Get data table with the just simple, call it interest. And that's it, you're gonna fill it with interest, but if you want to connect with other one this interest, can you collect two of the same table with if they're labeled by the sub tag of the other interest they share? So I probably want to have another branch and a name ID that allows me to define verbally the interest of individual. Then for every user I'm going to have a data table where one can not define manually, but rather select from the enumerator or sub tongue down, rather select from the enumerator by adding new or saving that into the data table. Assigning icon that is drawn from the public resources and selection. Probably the best. However, get the respondent rating model will enable one to save, comment, share, and store target fragment will not only require the separation of such a fragment in 3D world to be efficiently displayed resembling the business structure of the provider of such data. And that can be easily done by using the browser widget instead of each of the players, and highlighting desired pullouts from the text of the article, the key fragmentation and the highlightation of it. Alright, accessible, accessible, and the key is connected. We had to observe two-dimensional data, right? I think a few more laps and I'll be ready for the presentation that is worthy of hearing and watching. Therefore, there's data table war of each of the skills that resemble individual. Therefore, there's data table for each user that further defines somehow that, and these are 7 text variables, however 7 are fixed. I would want to, in my personal data table in Unreal Engine, to generate a raw, label it so, and then connect it to another data table and list all the fluid outputs that I have. Therefore, that allow me to construct, the professionals to construct a two-dimensional website planner app and use it to connect the pieces that one inputs inside the web, since the web page is the best. Everyone can access a web page. And therefore all the notes, all the posts, and the main text preparation work and assembly is done simple in a white plus. Generate piece of data. That when you hit plus, the idea light, it can be text, image, with a give web page reference to any piece of information, a screenshot or note or text that you have researched and mastered. However, each of these is an enumeration for the plus new, and then you can add another tile like in the player builder system and place the tiles of text around each other. We have to get the palantir blueprint and mask out the inner iris of the eye, and you use it as the board to render out that kind of information that will allow us to kind of have this uniform progressive fluid border around a piece of text that will be able to resize accordingly to the size of the render target, which will make us to assemble our pieces in the external level. Therefore, hitting plus will open a plus level, a new sublevel that is can be done pretty in BP, except the sun and lightning there, which can be alterable. We then place level XO and enable Magus platform to switch between these selections of the hierarchy. Like so. Connecting each stats and overlaying that. Over here there's going to be a zoom scope, like in Google and Edge. You have seen that before. the lower we switch between the same hierarchy and fix on replacing that and setting up the frame to fit it as a lens and refraction factor, but not like a building you exposing yourself so that further space stars. Bending, timelessly passing the space between the selected targets. And you possess that look. And you can use your control to simply connect collecting such a data archetypes. Check within the personal space, the personal dimension that we're going to be using, assembling these. Data table. As I understand, this data table has subdata table labeled as user ID, and each row shall be skill selected from the whole, and then somehow one has to trace this skill. Therefore, this will be the number, all the substructures of the skill. What makes tech fluid art and skills that one have mastered, so it was split into 3. Now this 3 will further have statistics and value that define either monetary or number, where there's hair or hair is in between. Therefore the color would go J. Next is gonna be the ranking and statistics of such a skill that one has players. One further pushes into the social, being deep down into the field of information. This would then get another data table and select and attach each of the range of predefined data tables. Then shall achievement and the sequence of targets that has to be acquired in order for this achievement to be achieved. Acquired, accomplished, therefore allowing one student to branch the knowledge of a subject or a matter. Now this shall further get in reference to the data table that will collect all the individual data tapes, data rows, right, that one person accumulates as one post. So all the posts that ever written going to be collected within these 3 sections and distributed kind of procedurally. Plan, process, mastery. Plan, process, mastery. Plan, process, mastery. Rank, value. ID. Pyramid. Plan, process, mastery. Feedback. Social. Stat, ID. However, there may be a few rules. Whoever one person. If I'm not sure if I'm gonna have to assemble it manually, I'm just to get these as the text as 7 text variables within each of these subdata table that I have to manually generate for each of the skills that I have to first collect. Therefore, execute task to do, collect a range of skills in data table, like interest, is none. Like here. Activities. Next. Yeah, to make it clear, I think I have to individually generate data table for each. All these sub rows, sub boxes, they're gonna pop up as I click on this allowing a sequence to be formed. Selection 1, 2, 3. Color match. Next, value. With the green, define the value of each of the parts discussed in this section. Or access the same thing, the same fragment of data if you want to buy it, or if you want to rate it, or if you're making it. This can of course cross-linked, and therefore the value is either the skill that one has mastered and increased the level of it, or its cost, or its profit. Value, cost, profit. Probably get that the cost and value, profit, and the sections cost, value, and profit. Alright, so next would be further splitting the substats to define the strengths of previous stats. Therefore, we're going to be splitting into like 6 defenses and minus poisoning, like in Magic the Gathering. And we're going to use icons to further define and clarify such a pieces of the information going to support the original presentation of the target defined. Therefore, kind of bubbles, yes, sub-bubbles, iconic sub-bubbles. Further, there's going to be a different layer. If this is sub-piece, this is another sub-piece of the original. Now this will show the mastery of one individual of such a skill and collect all the legit information. Not legit information, all the learning certificates and all the achievements that one have acquired that one's wish to present in a clear manner. Now the clarity is both on the defined piece of information that is received through defining, forging a vision and pass of organizing it in a sequence of nodes that have to be done in order to connect them in achievement. And the full process of these 3 is going to grant one to step into the other level, pushing further the personal statistics and increasing range of skills one possesses or services one can offer to other one who seeks such a service, offer about inquiry, search, the console, or escape. The console is going to open up the search bar for you, so you can always either access the key and spawn all the relevant to you pieces of information that interest you, that you track daily, or you can, you know, Alright, so that was the individual there. Now the clarity and the statistics of the search ratio was secure 6 certain professional that acquires such an ability or possesses such an artwork or is defined within these sub-roles. Therefore, hierarchy, identity, micro, if micro equals identity equals then individual, then spawn a platform called individual or something like that. Now, if micro and identity equals individual branch, then spawn another data table that is labeled as the ID of that individual. That's going to then spawn their skills around them. Therefore, there's going to be another data table of that individual. So, if micro and identity equals individual, then spawn data table ID, set variable name of the data table, get data table, and set ID equals to the search one input, and another branch. Then spawn the platform with the personalized personal dimension platform connecting the CV of the individual. Now this, I can only get, I will get confused by navigating layers if I'm going to stick everything in one data table. Therefore, I'm just going to get this piece. Further. Now, if I'm to switch the layer, and this is the social layer, is gonna, depending on the selection of the social layer that you have input once selecting the master layer, you can be kind of accessing the field of information of everything that's happening around you, orbiting around the globe that spawns all the interest. Then you navigate to your personal collection of interests that you concern about, and if they match, they're gonna filter and provide you the news feed from every single artwork there is. Therefore, you'll be able to access all the artworks in the world in a procedural manner and can quickly navigate through it, referencing, referring, or purchasing them, or just like voting and liking cat videos, you know. That's simple. To ranking trace +1 is a variable, and the history is this is getting complicated. So the history is gonna select, is gonna contain all the information that the group of people has accumulated together. So, for example, all the image library, all the post lists, right? The recent work is going to be placed in this section, and the upcoming events is going to be placed in this section. Simple. Next, macro. Now, macro is getting towards the organism, yet they represent organizations that slightly moving the target space of individuals into the whole that is here, not here. Therefore, the organism is the whole range of systems that kind of progress or diatribe like that. Now, this is the last layer, next layer, by the metaverse, which is virtual competition of the personal statistics, yet not matching or trading, but interactive simulation in character that I do not take careful, but just another camera blend. Social out, you get your galaxy and number of players, and just have to trace them all together with exponential height fog and this blind point light shooting down as frequent as one can get to get a smooth connection. Now, the label of such a connection. Now, the connection junction is defined by the density and increase in size and emission of the information, and the amount of information it is defined by the thickness and the largeness of the light. It's like a last text, right? So then you get this kind of orb. Now when you approach it, then it's gonna spawn and attach a relevant meaning to the two-dimensional viewport that every player is gonna spawn in the same manner on every cross of the junction within this branching path. Right? Right. Now, and we can use Google Chrome and Edge kind of logo with a 7 split hit for it, for the spectrum that warps in around the target. And it's going to be a conversion of 2D stats and into the 3D variables. In that manner, once you unwrap it, you kind of have the second view. Remember I told you about the first view. The first view is being just the initial preview. But once you select target, commit to it, you kind of change the camera and become that target, and your camera view is changing 90 degrees on a relevant axis. Now all you have to do is just say we target with blend and become that hierarchy, and the idea that is in the first section over here that's going to carry like a Diablo, that player character icon is going to resemble that title of that hierarchy, but it's text and icon and the player or the organization logo. Yeah, that is going to be a concern later. I have a pen and paper, but it's useless. Now next is alright, so Organism is going to spawn all the events that are global, and the larger is the influence of the organization, the higher that range is going to form. Now, it's better to keep the bubble layer equal so you can observe the organization as the number of individuals instead of ranging them one above another and mention the faceless range and race endless race, which is pointless. We bring them back together, we connect them in the middle. We use the black white underneath the planet and kind of link with the same spline the roots of each player that's going to carry further all the variables and stats that one connects with from the field of information, being the beginning of everything, which is 0, which is the start of everything. The black hole inside the whole simulation. And it would allow us to always generate another row and add another point in history if we and further scale the whole simulation down if we are to explore it and model it for the children to further engage their initial learning journey. For example, the formation of the galaxy that we cannot afford yet, therefore we put it later. Get the data, and once the visual is ready, we get the kids to watch it at the first day of first grade school. And then they start going together. So Organism is going to show all the events. So for example, all the researches that they carried out, orange, all the trade routes that are interesting you, all the battles, clashes that are happening there, all the world news, all the events that are happening, visions that are being forged, and operations performed. And having all of that is going to scale up to 1 where we are now. And from the Akashic records, which is pretty much the platform that's going to procedurally spawn level BP That will enable one to preview this level in it, and then on the interact and commitment just to dive it into that level. Diving into level also. Set view target camera with blend 1 second, 1 second. Ease in, ease out. Get camera into the wormhole blueprint. That's going to give us the refraction. Being the first hierarchy. The cube map. With the outer being black and inner. And inner being preview of the target location with 60 cube map. It is being rendered from the personal dimension from around the world and transmitted as a cube map rather than the whole fucking level. And once you commit it, you load yourself onto that personal dimension simulation like you have access in the Diana with a sword pixel streaming demo. It's just going to be standing in a kind of a cup collected from this sequence of splines, with the largest spline being on a horizontal axis around her and kind of flowing down into the chalice under her feet, tying into the wormhole. Yet if you are to observe the detail, you will be able to differentiate each of the strings that are connecting that personal fragment of information with the whole system under her feet. Therefore, the earth has to be quite large. A number of events has to be kind of larger to enable them to be seen. Therefore, we might initiate the preview section on all the global events to facilitate the visualization. Otherwise, you won't just see the power of it. But yet, you can talk about it and see how would you display like a nuclear war heading down for this silence. Greetings from Ukraine. Love. Now there's nothing else. Oh yeah, this range of balls around that Diana. And they have to be larger depending on the power of each. Therefore, each of these balls, light orbs, are going to resemble the intensity of the skill and proficiency. And each of the fragment of data being that interest is going to be compacting the spectrum of light within that sphere, compressing the 7-point light spectrally, and wrapped outward, forming the shield, following the Fibonacci with the embed. And that will allow further data on using the spectrum and enable one to connect the personal filter, the spectrum of interest of one's viewport, with the spectral representation of any target inquiry within the whole system, enabling one to simply connect the color and the ID and the intensity with a variable on the same ID, name, or skill. Range, a variable on the stats variety, seek by the target, inquiry. and therefore enabling the access of the sub-statistics that will enable one to clash each other. Right, others have done that. You just have to just jump one platform to under platform. Navigation. You can go up the platform, up the hierarchy, down the hierarchy. Each area around each hierarchy, which can be firstly previewed, then summarized, and then revealed. If such as mastery pass, or a sequence of data fragments that are accessed throughout the information acquiring stages by the seekers who search the whole field of information, simply skipping through astral data, traces of 2D, branches of data. You then simply set up the mobile device. Unlock, open the point light, and enable one to use the thumb. Bottom 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter to navigate between micro, meso, and micro. Thumb up to select the search bar, and just holding the thumb is going to list all your 2D targets that you seek, represented within these 7 columns according to the spectrum that you choose lately. Hitting plus 2 times, hitting central 2 times. This can enable you to get a new piece of information that you can then organize in further development reference. Then your phone is optimized. Now I'm done. Anyone? The arc calls for aid. My path is